All right. So, Wendy, I want to talk to you because this month is Epilepsy Awareness Month. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So
November.
I thought we could talk about you and Penny and epilepsy and kind of create some awareness and some education. But actually, let's first start with how you came here and how we got started.
Yeah. So I came to Kanna.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I always want to say Kanna, but Kanna.
Yeah.
So I started here back in August. So I don't know how many months is that, like 3-4 months. And my friend Molly has been coming here for almost a year, and I saw, just pictures that she had posted, and I had said, like, that looks cool, and had expressed interest. So when there was a special, I took advantage and came and tried it, and I love it. It's been like really I've never been into team sports, and it's so different than anything I've ever done. And I really like it. So
What did you think coming in versus the reality, or did it actually match up to what you thought?
I think it matched up to what I thought. I think it's a lot more accessible than I thought it would be. And I think anytime you start like a new fitness program, it can be intimidating. So,
For sure.
And I know like just everybody feels intimidated by CrossFit because it's so different. But, I think it was pretty much exactly what I thought. The thing that surprised me is I think someone had said, like, you come for the workout, but you stay for, like, the community. And I've just felt like it's really cool to have people who, like, you're going to have a conversation with when you come, and, like, just little icebreaker at the beginning when you do question of the day. Like, it really does, like, make it a different experience. It's not just go to the gym, sweat, and go home. And it makes me, like, more motivated to come. So
Cool.
I like that part of it.
Nice. And a lot of people, as you go through and learn different movements and stuff, then you start realizing that you can like target specific goals. Like when you first come in, you have no idea what to expect or like what a good goal would be. A lot of people come in wanting to lose weight and stuff like that.
Right.
But beyond that, once you start learning movements, people tend to have more performance-based goals.
Yes.
So has that come about for you yet?
Yeah. For sure. I'm very goal-oriented. When it comes to fitness, I've found like I was really into like running races for a while, and then injury kind of took that away as like the goal. But also, you set a big goal, like I'm going to run a marathon, and then you do it, and then it's done. And what's the next motivator? Am I going to do it again? Am I going to do something else? So I found like that kind of dead-ended for me after I maxed out, and then injury kind of prevented me from running.
Right.
So here it's different because every workout, every day, it's like a goal. Like you just tracking like today's workout, each round you tracked your time, and it's just like every little chip on it, you think about, okay, I want to try to finish in this amount of time. And it's a motivator.
Yep.
And like the fitness testing this month has been really cool, just to kind of get a baseline for where I am and like how many like push-ups I can do, which currently the number is 0, but
so maybe a push-up is your goal?
Yeah,
right?
like just
From the
someday I'll
ground?
do a push-up on the ground versus
a bench or a
versus
box?
a modified. But then there always is a modified version that so you're doing something, you're working towards it. I really want to do a pull-up. Like that's my big goal. I feel like a lot of people think that too. I think Molly said that too. We were talking about it the other day.
Yep, she said that the other day, yeah.
But so it's just, there's always something to work towards. So
right.
That's a different part of it.
Yep. And then once you do get a pull-up, then it's like, okay, I want
Now
5 pull-ups,
yep.
right? And then I want 10.
Yep.
And then I want to do kipping.
Yep.
And then I want to get a muscle up. So there's always something.
There's always something.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah.
So talk about, I guess let's start with maybe just generally where you grew up, and then Penny came into the picture, and let's do a little bit of background.
So I'm from the area. So we're in Montgomery County. I grew up in Bucks County, about 30 minutes from here. I lived in Atlanta for a while after college, and then my husband and I moved back up here, and we had our daughter Penny. She's 3.5 now. She's our only kid, and she, when she was born, she was very typical. She met milestones, nothing, significant to note.
Right.
Until she was 8 months old, she had a seizure. It was actually the day after Christmas. We woke up to her seizing, and it was 15 minutes long, convulsive seizure. Obviously, it was terrifying. I'll never forget that.
Because up until that point, there was nothing.
Yeah.
It was just you had an 8-month-old, and it was Christmas.
Yeah,
and it was fun. And
yep.
Yeah.
And she had never even had been sick. Nothing. So this was the first time that. When you have a seizure, it's typical for your body temperature to raise.
Okay.
So we obviously called an ambulance, and in the ambulance they said, it seems like she has a fever. This is probably just a febrile seizure, which is common, So we were kind of like, okay. So we, did the hospital thing, and they sent us home. They're like, this is probably just a one-time thing. And then the next day, she had another episode. This time, not a convulsive seizure, but she just kind of went limp. And at that point, I do think she had a fever, and so this was her first illness. Again, did the hospital thing. They did all kinds of testing, found nothing wrong, sent us home, this time with medication to stop a seizure. It's called Diastat. It's the most common medication for anyone who has a seizure disorder, and it's a rectal administration, so it's not the most convenient.
Right.
But most people, if they have a seizure disorder and they have a history of their seizures being longer than 5 minutes, they'll get this.
Okay.
And that's in case the seizure goes too long, you put this, it's like a benzo, you put it in their butt, and then it immediately helps to stop the seizure.
Gotcha.
So they sent us home with that, which I was like, what?
Right.
What do I do?
Yeah.
And they were like, this is probably just a one-time thing.
Right.
So we were hopeful. And then 10 days after that was the first really big bad
But during
episode.
those 10 days, you must have been pins and needles, just waiting for
Oh
something.
yeah,
right?
It was terrifying.
Yeah.
And that day, her seizure was probably well over an hour. I don't know if it continued or if it stopped and restarted, because they had her in an ambulance doing all that, whatever they were doing. They were trying to intubate her. They were having complications. It was a whole
Did you try
mess.
the Diastat?
I gave her the Diastat, yeah. So she started seizing. It was 5:17 p.m. I was waiting for my husband to come home. He takes the train home. So I was sitting in the living room with her. She just fell over, started seizing. I was freaking out. Call 911.
For sure.
It was the first time I ever gave her the Diastat, and I couldn't remember the directions. So I'm looking at the directions. Right. So by the time I got it in her, it was probably 7 minutes after the seizures, and now we know that medication doesn't really work well for her.
Got it.
But so yeah, I gave her the Diastat. Then the EMS gave her a bunch of other stuff. I think Ativan, but they had issues too, and so she ended up being airlifted to CHOP. And it was just that whole, I remember we were in the, it's not the ER, triage, but there's a separate room. I don't even remember what it's called, where it's what you see in the shows and movies, where it's
Sure.
there's 50 doctors around and everybody's whispering.
Right.
And that's where we were. And I just remember it was out of body experience. And I remember the nurse, I was like, how long are we going to be here? And she was like, weeks, plural.
Wow.
And I was like, I don't even know what's happening. I was so overwhelmed.
Right.
So we were actually there only for a few days, which was nice. She recovered, obviously. They started her on a daily medication for seizures, and we had lots of long talks with the doctors because we were terrified to bring her home. We were like, what do we do? So it was just sort of the rug ripped out from under you. We were just starting to get comfortable. We had spent 2 nights away from her a week before Christmas. And just it's just crazy because it was we were just starting to get comfortable, and
you
then
go from 0 to 60.
And now it's now we're afraid to leave her
Yeah.
alone. I can't get a shower. I can't change the laundry. I can't do anything. I have to watch her all the time.
And you were working at the time?
No, I wasn't, which was a blessing because I was able to be with her, but I was with her all the time. So,
Right.
I mean,
Right.
it was a blessing that I was available.
For sure, but you had to be so vigilant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a few months after that, we learned that they actually ran genetic testing while we were at CHOP, at that visit. And subsequently, she had, continued to have these prolonged seizures. We didn't really know what was going on. A lot of trips to the hospital, lots of ambulance rides, and
So anytime she would have a seizure, you would go to the hospital?
Yep.
And you go downtown to
No,
CHOP?
usually we would go to Abington, which
Okay.
is closer. The ambulance in our county, at least, they have to take you to the closest hospital.
Gotcha.
So that was our closest house. So we got really familiar with the ER at Abington.
They're like, oh, you again.
Yeah.
Nice to
I
see
had like some of the ER peds docs in my
On your
phone.
phone,
Yep.
right. Oh my gosh.
Because they would send us home and they'll be like, just call me directly if you have another problem.
Oh my gosh.
So we learned that she has this genetic mutation, and then we learned also that so it's not an inherited mutation as far as testing can tell. Neither my husband or I have it.
Right. She's the first.
She's the first, which they call a de novo mutation, like it just came out of nowhere.
Yep.
But so once we got the results, we're like, okay, so now we know the cause of her epilepsy, which is great because I think something like 2/3 of people don't know the cause of their epilepsy.
Wow.
But it was also devastating news because it's very commonly associated with this condition, Dravet Syndrome, which is like a devastating, catastrophic, lifelong form of epilepsy that has like a slew of comorbid conditions. And so, once we started, like we hung up the phone from getting that information, and then just, my husband and I both on our own computers, him at work, me,
So you were on the phone getting this information
from the
about Dravet,
doctor.
and they were explaining everything.
Well, they didn't diagnose her with Dravet at first.
Okay.
They're
Gotcha.
like, because at that point her development was typical, and it still is actually, but her seizure, because it isn't a genetic diagnosis, it's a clinical diagnosis.
Got it.
So at that point there wasn't, we had since gotten some second opinions, and she definitely has this condition. Her seizure presentation is like spot on.
Gotcha.
And as soon as we started reading about the kids, we're like, this is exactly what we've been going through. This is exactly how her seizures are presenting. And but then it's also like just scary. I mean, the mortality rate for Dravet syndrome is 1 in 5. So it's overwhelming information when you get that. So that's sort of where we are now. She's 3.5 now. She's, I mean, I hesitate to say she's doing well.
Sure.
In so many ways, she's doing really, really well. In other ways, she's not. Developmentally, she goes to typical preschool. She has a nurse with her to keep her safe.
Sure.
But she, talks, sings, dances, walks, runs, plays. She does gymnastics. She does a lot of the stuff that I can't even do here at CrossFit at gymnastics, which is cool. She, some things we have to work a little harder at, but she's, if you saw her, you wouldn't really think much of anything.
Yep.
But her seizures are really aggressive. She has primarily now smaller seizures, like focal, they call them myoclonic seizures. I don't know. She has all kinds of seizures, but she'll just kind of space out, do like a head bob or a shake, and pretty much like anything outside of the house is a trigger. So anytime we leave the house, she might have like a cluster of seizures, and we need to go back in.
Right.
So I mean, in some ways, like we're just so glad that she's progressing, but in other ways, we're like, come on, can we get a little better seizure control? So so that's kind of where we are right now.
How frequent these days will she have a seizure?
Every day.
Every day.
Every day.
But it could range from kind of a space out to
so convulsive seizures, so the diet. So
so let's talk about it.
So she was having, I would say, 2 to 3 convulsive seizures, like the big scary ones.
Right. Like grand mal.
Like a grand mal. Today they might say like a generalized tonic-clonic.
Got it.
I mean, the seizure definition like is always changing. I feel like, but so the big scary ones. She was having probably like once or twice a month.
Okay.
Over 15 minutes per episode.
Got it.
And that was pretty much the case until we started her on this ketogenic diet for epilepsy. She was 18 months when we initiated the diet, and slowly after starting, her seizures got less and less frequent, less and shorter duration, and then she went 13 months without a single tonic-clonic seizure.
So let's talk about that
Yeah.
inflection point, because
Yeah.
that's obviously huge.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you saw it in front of you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how old was she when she started the ketogenic
she was
diet?
18 months. So at that point, we had tried and failed 2 different seizure medications.
Okay. But no changes to any diet
no.
during that time?
Nope.
Okay.
And I hesitate to say we're lucky, but we have been lucky in that her seizures are not as severe as they could be. Some kids with Dravet Syndrome, you're in the ICU and they're seizing and you're like, what do we try next? For us, that hasn't been the experience. We're at home and we're frustrated,
Right.
but we're able to sort of like take our time making changes, which is a blessing. So after trying and failing 2 different medications, we were still seeing the same presentation. We decided, after a lot of debate, to do the dietary therapy.
So were they talking to you about ketogenic diet before, and you were just like, no, let's just try these meds? Or did they not even mention it, and then they were like, hey, these 2 meds aren't working, let's try this intervention?
So at that point, we were at a bit of a crossroads, and we explored our options and did our own research.
Got it.
To try to figure out what the best next step would be.
Yep.
And we kind of decided that if we stuck with Children's Hospital, we would do keto because they have one of the best programs for the ketogenic diet for epilepsy.
Got it.
And so we kind of there were a lot of factors, but it's not like any other, it's a huge commitment. And so it wasn't a decision that we made lightly. I mean, to start the diet, first we had to take a full day course at CHOP, just to even get on the list for starting the diet. And we
to
did
work
that.
with an RD.
Yeah.
Who will give you
so they
all
have
the
a
numbers.
team.
And,
yeah. So
Got
they
it.
have a team. They have 2 dietitians. They have a handful of nurses. The neurologist, obviously. They have a chef who helps come up with recipes for the kids. And then when you initiate the diet, you're actually admitted to the hospital
Wow.
for 5 days.
So they can monitor you.
So they monitor the kid, and then while the child is admitted, the parents and caregivers are actually in class to learn about how to prepare and calculate the foods. So
Gotcha.
it's like a big deal when you start this, and they say when you commit to it, you really need to at least commit to 3 months. 6 months is what they recommend, because that's a lot to go through, and then to do it for a month and then be like, this isn't working for me. That's you have to really commit. So it wasn't an easy decision for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
To do that. But yeah, so when she was 18 months, we were admitted to initiate. So that's actually, it's been 2 years this week.
So when you were admitted and went through the course, she was being monitored. How, and we'll get into what keto is as well, but how soon did you see...
Ketosis?
No, not even ketosis. We can get into that, but when did you see her affect or her present, the results of it, right? The benefits of going ketogenic.
So the science behind why it works is unclear. There's the doctors don't understand why it works. But what her neurologist tells us is that she believes that the diet sort of protects your neurons. So for Penny, the way her genetic mutation is, it affects the sodium channel. So her brain, her neurons in her whole body can't communicate effectively. So somehow the diet and what it does to the cells, like, improves that.
Sure.
So what was tricky when we started is that she was on a medication that made her acidotic when we were initiated for the diet.
Okay.
So she was already acidotic before we put her on keto. And acidotic it means like her body pH was really low. And she was already on medication to correct that because of a medication she was on for seizures.
Yeah, so she's on the med for a med. Yeah,
she's on med for a med.
Yeah.
So she was already on that. And when we initiated the diet, her acidosis became so severe that they wanted to immediately take her off of that medication. So our 5-day hospital stay was actually a 9-day hospital stay because it turned into a med wean in addition to starting the diet.
Yeah,
and then
down on the med.
But then they also didn't want to take her off because that was the only med she was on at the time. So then we had to add a new med to protect her. So it was very complicated. But as soon as we removed that med, her cognition improved. I mean, she was like talking, walking, moving more easily. And partly I think it was the diet, but partly I think it was removing that medication because that medication was known to have some side effects.
Got it.
So she got evaluated actually by early intervention right before that. And then when we came back and her therapy started, her therapist was like, this isn't the kid that I evaluated because she's doing way better. So that was pretty cool to see that happen. And I'm sure there were more factors at play than just the diet. But so she, like I said, she was like once or twice a month going into these like 15-minute at least seizures.
Yep.
After we started the diet in November, she had one seizure Christmas Eve that year. It was 10 minutes. And then another sometime in the spring, and then one that June. And they just got shorter and shorter and less frequent. And then she went from June of 2017 all the way to August of 2018 and did not have a single tonic-clonic seizure.
So something's working there.
Yes, for sure.
So let's talk about the diet itself, because some people, it's so interesting because things with diet and exercise go in waves, and so keto is like a very hot topic nowadays for people, and a lot of people see it as like the new diet craze, right? Like, let's lose weight, let's go keto. Whereas your application is super clinical. Like there's you're weighing things to the gram and
tenth of a gram.
Yeah. So talk about kind of a general definition of keto, and then how that applies.
Yeah.
To Penny.
So basically, my understanding of keto is that when your body, basically you starve your body of carbohydrates, and it causes your energy source to become fat.
Yeah, ketones.
Right?
Ketone bodies. Yep.
Right. So basically, like as the carbohydrates in your body decrease, the ketones increase, and then that's when once your ketones reach a certain level, you're considered in ketosis.
Correct.
I don't know what the level is. Penny's urine pH, that doesn't. Her blood ketones usually run like around 5 or 6.
Yeah, so it's usually if you're above like 4.5, 5 in terms of millimoles.
Yeah.
You would be considered in ketosis.
In ketosis.
Yeah.
So yeah, she's.
But that's done with a blood test. And,
it's like a. It's because we used to check her blood sugars too. So so she we have like the little finger.
Same machine as diabetics would use, but there are certain strips that you can get for ketones. Yep.
Yeah. So so that's my understanding of ketosis. If you asked me 2 years ago, I probably would have been able to go into a little more detail, but it's now more just practical knowledge.
Yeah, you're just doing it. Yeah,
we just go through the motions. So for her, in terms of the ketogenic diet for epilepsy, most people who use it use Keto Calculator to come up with their food, or they work with their dietitian, and their dietitian just hands them the recipes.
Sure.
Children's Hospital of Philadelphia's program is a little different.
Okay.
They actually have their own like calculation system. So you learn that when you go to the classes, you learn how to calculate the food specific to your child. Okay. So, we have friends whose children are the same age, also on keto at the same ratio, but their meal plan is different from Penny's. Every kid's meal plan is unique to them, which is good. They have I think they have like a higher success rate. And a higher rate of families who stay on the diet than other programs because it's very tailored.
Got it.
So for Penny, we have her like little meal plan, and then we have a whole manual of exchanges, they call it. So that's like a serving.
Right.
So like for each meal, she gets this many servings of protein, this many servings of carbohydrate, and this many servings of fat.
Do you know those numbers off the top of your head?
She
or in
gets,
terms of grams or tenths of gram? Like,
so it depends on what it is. So her meal plan right now, it changes every so often, but right now her meal plan is, so if it's with heavy cream, she gets 36 grams of heavy cream.
okay.
And it has to be 6 grams of fat per serving, heavy cream. And then she gets, 1.9 exchanges of protein. So that's 1.9 servings of a protein. So let's say it's turkey, that's 7.4 grams per serving. So she would get 7.4 times 1.9.
Got it.
So,
Yeah,
so this is
like
what we do every meal.
Almost 14 grams of protein.
Of turkey for like turkey lunch meat.
Right.
And then carbohydrate, she gets 1.3 servings. So let's say this morning she got Cheerios. She got 2 grams of Cheerios. And then she gets, in a heavy cream meal, she gets 3.5 exchanges of fat. So if it were butter, it would be like 16 grams of butter.
And you had posted a picture a couple days ago showing like half a Ritz cracker or a Cheez-It cracker. So I think a lot of people are pretty familiar with how small a Cheez-It cracker is, and it was half of that, and that was how much of a daily serving?
That was her carbohydrate serving for 1 meal. So she gets 3 meals per day and 2 snacks. The snacks have no carbs, so she just gets protein and fat for her snack, and then her meals each have a small amount of carbs. So if she had Cheez-Its, which she actually said she didn't like them, so we won't do that again. But if, every once in a while we try to do like a snack food just to like let her feel normal. So she got 1.5 Cheez-Its with a meal.
And that's all day.
That's it. Yeah. I mean, if we did
now she has
Cheez-Its,
3.5, so she's smaller, but people I think can
right. Like I'll never hand her a bag of Cheez-Its,
right,
because she just can't have that. We try to do more healthy. Like she loves vegetables. It's actually funny. I think she is a little more exploratory with food than some kids because she's so limited. Yeah. So if I'm like, oh, we're having like a different kind of fish tonight, she gets really excited about that.
Right. She can explore within her world.
Right. It's like it's different.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's kind of like her daily meal plan. She gets 3 meals, 2 snacks, and then all of it's calculated.
What did she have for breakfast this morning?
So I made her cheese soup, which it's heavy cream, so 36 grams of heavy cream, cheddar cheese. So she got like, 13 or 14 grams. I don't remember exactly how many of cheddar cheese, and then a little bit of butter. I think it was like 8 grams of butter. And I just melt it all together in a mixing pot and pour it in a bowl, and that's cheese soup. Yeah. And then, which it's a weird thing, but she likes that. And then she had Cheerios for her carbs, so she had maybe like 15 Cheerios. And then she had oil. So we just started doing MCT oil. So
talk about that.
Yeah, so up until August, the seizure control with the big seizures was really good, and then they started up again in August. So we've been talking about how we want to approach trying to treat them, and we take a very, like, as I mentioned, slow and steady approach because we can. And her seizures are not so severe. Like, we've gotten to a point where we're pretty comfortable treating them at home. Sometimes we still call 911, but as long as it resolves, we try to stay home just because it's easier for her to, like to care for her at home than in the ER. So we we were weighing, like, should we add more meds? Should we change her diet plan? What should we do? So we decided, so in place of some of the fat, like usually we give her butter, because it's right now, that's her preferred. We do MCT oil, which is medium chain triglyceride, and it's supposed to be like more quickly metabolized, I guess. And as we had talked about before, you were saying athletes use it for an energy boost or whatever. What kind of coffee?
Yeah, bulletproof coffee.
Bulletproof coffee, yeah. So, I mean...
MCT oil and butter.
And butter. So, I mean, it's a similar effect. And so we started that a few weeks ago. So we're slowly titrating up the amount of oil she gets. So right now she gets 2 exchanges, so like 8 grams.
So a little, like, almost 2 teaspoons.
Yeah.
Yep.
And she gets that for 1 meal, and then like 4 grams, 1 teaspoon, I guess, for the other 2 meals.
Yep.
And we're slowly trying to increase it until she'll be up to 3 exchanges. So, like 3 fat servings per meal.
Yep.
It's doing a number on her stomach, though.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Have you seen what side effects have you seen or effects have you seen?
Of the
and
oil.
bad? Yeah.
Yeah. So the oil has definitely improved her seizures. So we haven't seen a big seizure since we started it, which is crazy. It was a month Wednesday since we saw a big one. So that's pretty awesome. Her little seizures have been so severe since like the fall. She can't stay outside for recess most days at school.
Oh, wow.
Like she just has to go in because like I don't know if it's the sun or the I don't know what it is, the overstimulation, but she just can't even stay outside for recess.
Wow.
And she gets into such a cluster of small seizures that she has to go inside. So since starting the MCT oil, she's been able to stay outside for recess. Yesterday we had snow, and she was like, I want to go out and play. And normally I would like kind of be hesitant, but I was like, let's try. She went sledding. We were outside for probably 20, 25 minutes before she started really having bad seizures and we had to go in. So, I mean, that was like...
But that's a small victory,
huge
right?
improvement.
Yeah.
So I definitely have noticed changes, and I hesitate. I mean, my husband and her nurse and I were all like walking on eggshells. We're like, we don't want to say that it's doing good things too soon. And her stomach is really like she's always had stomach issues. I mean, this poor kid, she has a steel stomach, I always say. She doesn't like throw up a lot. Some kids on keto, they're just like puking all the time. They can't get the food down. She tolerates the food like digestively, but she's always had like issues going to the bathroom. I mean, we've had to do enema. She'll ask for like a glycerin suppository. There's a penguin on the box, and she'll be like, I think I need a penguin. To help me.
And this has always been the case?
Stomach issues?
Or since the oil?
So since the oil, now she's like having a lot of diarrhea.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So because that's common
With the oil.
with people who get on MCT oil.
Yeah.
It's really cheap. You can buy it in like these huge, brown glass canisters and all that. But
that's what
if
we have.
people even take a little more than a teaspoon, even they can really
it'll definitely
do a number on their stomach.
Yeah. So I mean, we're just being mindful. Like I would love to be able to go up to the full amount, but we're just taking it slow because we don't want her to we want her to retain some nutrition.
For sure. For sure.
So it's just, I mean, this is sort of the journey with epilepsy, but specifically with Dravet syndrome. It's just constantly weighing treatment and side effects.
Right.
And that's just everything. And we just try to be really mindful of side effects, and especially for her, like cognitive side effects and just developmental side effects. Like we try really hard to like do everything we can to maintain her cognition.
Yep.
But I mean, we can only control so much. So we just, it's just, that is what it is.
Yep. Well, it's so interesting because a lot of people will talk about keto from like a diet standpoint. They want to lose weight and whatever, and you hear it in the CrossFit world. But this is clearly, it is keto, but it's for a very clinical purpose.
Yeah.
And so that's where, when people ask us about, well, what are your thoughts on keto? Well, for some people, it's amazing. Like, if you want to go from seizure or no seizure, this is a great path to at least explore with professional help. Right. And then other people might see it as just a quick diet, right?
And that's, it's frustrating. And other keto moms, like my epilepsy keto moms, we get really frustrated about it. And so with most people, I will say she's on a medical diet instead of saying keto diet, because I feel like the word keto is like, it means different things than it did 2 years ago when we started, and even before that. And I think people, it's just hard. Like, you want to be accurate. And I it's like teetering this line. I want her to feel included and like normal. I don't want her to stand out because of the differences, but food is such a huge part of our lives. And like, I don't ever want to sell her short. Like, she makes crazy sacrifices for a 3-year-old. Like, she's never we've never taken her out for ice cream.
Yeah, and especially being at preschool, seeing
And at
other kids
preschool,
eat and
they
what
do
they bring in.
they do food every week. They taste a new food,
Yeah.
and she doesn't participate in that. I mean, but she doesn't let it bug her. You know, I just I just want to like give her credit for
sure.
what she does, because I feel like it is important to like build awareness around how unique of a diet this is for her, and like it's not, you know, it's just so many people will be like, oh, keto, I do that too. Oh, keto flu, I know what that's like, and it's just different. It's
correct.
I don't doubt that people experience keto flu. I don't doubt that people, you know, are on the ketogenic diet, but you know, you can take a break and have a piece of pizza, and it's not going to change. Much.
Well, and right, and where people get confused or misled is thinking that just because they're low carb, or even what they think is low carb, when really it might not be very low carb, that doesn't matter. What matters is eventually, like, if ketosis is really more about that blood reading that we were talking about.
Right.
It has to do with carbohydrate that you consume, but it might not.
Right.
Like, so two people can be at the same carbohydrate intake level. One person is in ketosis, the other person is not.
Oh yeah, and we see that
it.
with the kids too. I mean,
exactly.
the patients who use this diet to treat medical conditions,
right.
Their ketone levels vary drastically, and
exactly.
and everybody metabolizes it differently, and that's why I think what makes the program at CHOP like really, like, I feel very lucky to have access to that, because it's so tailored to each kid.
Yep.
It's not like a one size fits all. I mean, people will be like, oh, this recipe is 4-to-1, which is her ratio. So 4-to-1 means for every 4 servings of fat, there's 1 serving of protein and carb.
Got it.
So her current ratio is 90% of her calories are fat, 7% are protein, and 3% are carbohydrate.
Gotcha.
You'll hear kids are on like a 3-to-1 or a 2.75-to-1, and it all just depends. So, you know, someone will be like, oh, this recipe is 4-to-1, she can have it, but like not according to, like, yeah, technically I guess she could, and I could like fudge a little and let her try something, but technically, no, like I have to calculate according to her meal plan.
Yeah, it's way more precise than people
It's super
might think.
precise,
And because people listening to this and might or probably do CrossFit, or at least are in that world, and because there is that more general question of like, is keto right for me? The quick answer is like, if you're doing high intensity stuff, and this is totally different than what Penny's going through, but like exercise wise, if you're going through high intensity exercise, your body needs carbohydrate, lower carb than a standard American diet. Yeah, of course, like not having McDonald's and not having you know, all this bread and pasta and all that, for a normal person is probably a good idea to eat real whole foods, which is just naturally lower carb. But you need carbohydrate to fuel the high intensity stuff.
Right.
There's some, and we won't go into it, but like there's some ultra distance people who run, you know, miles and miles, and ultra marathoners who can be very low carb and high fat, and their bodies do run on those ketones. And yeah, like MCT oil, like I'll have it occasionally, and I do find great clarity in terms of concentration, and so there's definitely a crossover of some benefits to it. But you know, just because you hear someone is on keto, it doesn't mean that they're doing the same thing that like Penny.
It's like it's like a buzzword.
Yes,
and
it's totally a buzzword.
And it's interesting, and like I think it's important too to like recognize. You know, I have parents who ask me, like, should I try this with my kid? And I'm like, not on your own. You need to work with a dietitian. And I mean, literally, they wouldn't send us home from the hospital because she was so acidotic and we couldn't get her levels up. She takes 30 milliliters of this, like, disgusting liquid medication to balance acidosis every day. I mean, and we monitor her urine, we monitor her blood. Right. She's seen by her team of clinicians, like, every 3 months.
Right.
This isn't something that you can just like do.
Right.
And I mean, you could, but I wouldn't recommend it at all. And if you know, I agree with you. I think, you know, like I was joking, I ate pizza yesterday and I had brain fog. Like I definitely recognize, and I think eating healthy is totally different than saying like, oh, I'm going to do this keto diet. Like I think it's just different.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Totally. What what's the percentage of people that are affected by Dravet, epilepsy in general? Like, what kind of, like, how rare is this?
So epilepsy, the statistics are that 1 in 26 people will be diagnosed with epilepsy in their life, which is pretty astounding. 1 in 10 people will experience a seizure at some point in their life.
10% of people.
Yeah.
And is there a male-female
not that I know off the top of my head.
Even?
I'm sure that there is a statistic out there, but I don't know it off the top of my head.
But it's not like, because with autism, it's predominantly male, right? Whereas I didn't know if that was the case.
Not that I know.
Okay.
I haven't heard that.
Okay. Yeah.
For Dravet syndrome specifically, it impacts 1 in 20,000.
So rare.
It's very rare.
Yeah.
It's, for comparison's sake, like I believe Down syndrome impacts 1 in 3,000.
So about 7 times as
rare.
Yeah.
And I believe it's something like 3 to 5% of infants who have a seizure in their first year of life, so under 12 months, will develop Dravet syndrome.
Wow.
So if you think about how rare it is for an infant to have a seizure, only 3% of those kids, 3 to 5, I think it is, will develop Dravet syndrome.
Out of that pool, right?
Yeah.
Got it.
So it's very rare.
Wow. What else would you want people to know? Where can they find more information?
Yeah. So I actually work for the Dravet Syndrome Foundation, and what's unique about the Dravet Syndrome Foundation is the commitment to research. The budget is very fiscally responsible, so I believe it was about 70%. I would have to look at the statistics, but of our budget last year went directly to research projects. So, which
and
is
that's a lot compared
to like operating costs are
foundations.
super low.
Right.
We do a lot, and I work in family and caregiver engagement, so I get to work with families a lot, which is nice.
Yeah.
And I've been there for about a year now. So the DravetFoundation.org is where you will find like the most most concise amount of information specifically about Dravet syndrome. And I just feel like, for Epilepsy Awareness Month, Dravet syndrome is so rare. It's rare that anyone will encounter anyone else with this condition.
Yeah, I mean, Penny's the first that I've heard. Yeah.
I mean, if anyone's listening to this or watching this, they'll probably never hear of another kid with Dravet syndrome. It would be rare. But you'll probably experience people with epilepsy, and I feel like there's just such a stigma. People with epilepsy hide it. They don't, and it's getting better, but I feel like there just isn't a comfort level to talk about that because it's scary.
Sure. Well, and if you have it, it can be embarrassing.
Yeah. I mean, and having a seizure can be really horrible, and for most people, they're not life-threatening. For us, they are, but for most people, they're not. And so I think just helping to normalize epilepsy, and I mean, I know that, again, like there's some sort of statistic out there, but the dollars that go to epilepsy research are super, super few compared to dollars that go to other types of medical research, but the number of people who are impacted by epilepsy is so significantly higher.
Well, you said 1 in 10, right?
Right. Yeah. 1 in 10 will have a seizure. 1 in 26 people will have epilepsy, which means you've had more than one seizure.
Gotcha.
And it wasn't correlated with like a specific incident. Like, let's say you have an injury, and that caused you to have a seizure, or whatever. So I think just helping to learn, like, what do I do if I see someone who has a seizure? Like, how can I help them? That's really important. And I mean, I would encourage everybody to just like Google, like, what do I do if I see someone having a seizure? Just to familiarize yourself, like, stay calm, call for help.
Make sure they're safe.
Safe. Don't put anything in their mouth. That's like such a,
Because what was it? The old myth was like
they're going to swallow their tongue.
Swallow their tongue.
Yeah, no, that's false. you can't swallow your tongue.
Just make sure their head is safe.
Yeah.
Right, if they're on the ground.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, and I just think it's important that people understand. I mean, for me, it's important because I want Penny to be safe.
Of course.
But you know, I just feel like for the general population, like the likelihood that you'll see someone have a seizure is a lot higher than you might realize. So it's just good to like know and be prepared.
Yeah, for sure. Is there anything else that you want people to know?
I just think on this journey, like empathy is the lesson that just keeps coming up, and just learning. I think it's just really important to just like think about other people. Yeah. I mean, everybody has their stuff. Everybody's going through crazy things, and even though like I know sometimes my friends will be like, I don't know why I'm complaining about this to you, but like it's all relative is something
Sure.
my friend Katie always says. Like everybody's journey involves like significant challenge, and we all just need to like be a little more mindful of each other and, you know, just care a little more. I think that's really what I've learned through all this. And Penny, I mean, if any of you know her or get to meet her, she just is so inspiring. She's so tough, and just, I mean, she's wise beyond her years. And to sit with a plate of like a bowl of Cheerios in front of her and not eat it. I mean, one morning she likes to help me eat because we help her eat.
Right.
So I had walked away and my bowl of cereal was sitting on the table, and she had the spoon and she was just waiting for me. And my husband walked in and he goes, "What are you doing?" And she's like, I'm helping mommy. Like she didn't even think to take a bite. Yeah. And I'm sure there will be a time where we'll get to that. But for right now, she just continues to amaze me. And, you know, we're just thankful every skill she learns, every day that, you know, we don't get a call from the nurse that she had a big seizure. That's like that's good. So, so thanks for having me.
Thanks for giving all the information.
Yeah.
Hopefully, even if one person out there learns something, right? Pick something up, which I'm
for sure
that our 2 listeners will pick it up. But thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Appreciate it.